Researcher-clinician Dr. Torsten Nielsen was greatly affected by the Terry Fox story when he was growing up in Vancouver. This led him to become a cancer researcher who today works on sarcomas, the type of cancer that killed the young British Columbian in 1980. In June 2008, Dr. Nielsen published a paper in the prestigious journal Cancer Research, which clarifies how genetic error leads to the development of connective tissue malignancies. His team, collaborating with researchers in the Netherlands and the US, have found a class of drugs that can kill cancer cells found in synovial joints in laboratory tests.
I'm Dr. Torsten Nielsen. I'm a clinician scientist at the University of British Columbia working out of Vancouver General Hospital and the BC Cancer Agency. On a daily basis, I literally do go bench to bedside. I work at the Vancouver General Hospital clinical side, and then I come across the street and work here in the research lab. And the whole point of it is to really make sure that my research is closely tied to what is important for patients today. What we do here is we try and take the masses of genetic research that have gone on and given us huge insights into what causes cancer and turn them into useful biomarkers that can be used on patient biopsy specimens and blood samples to figure out which patients are expressing these genes. And the hope is that by doing so, we can more easily translate the findings in the lab into what matters to patients and what we can actually use to do a better job in diagnosing exactly what kind of disease they have, and hopefully to develop targeted treatments that counteract the exact changes that are present in these patients' tumors. When you have a more precise diagnosis, you can tailor your therapy more appropriately to exactly what's wrong with that patient. And that means you can have fewer side effects because you can narrow your spectrum of treatment to exactly that disease. We have a few examples of work that we've done in our lab that I think are already impacting on treatment. So on the diagnosis side, we look at some unusual kinds of sarcomas which have very specific genetic changes, and we've been able to turn those into clinical tests that we can use to correctly identify those tumors. That's why having a very accurate diagnosis is one of the cornerstones for cancer care.
Terry Fox had a form of aggressive sarcoma that killed him. Even today, the outlook for these tumors is poor, as on average only about half of patients survive their disease.
And we're also working on new treatments that counteract exactly those changes. We're doing that for a number of diseases such as synovial sarcoma, which is funded by the Canadian Cancer Society, and a few other related diseases that tend to affect adolescents and young adults. We can figure out which of these genetic changes are actually present in most of the patient's tumors. And that lets us decide which of the many possible genetic changes we see in cancer are the ones that we should give the highest priority to targeting and to developing new drugs for. Clearly, we hope that we can cure cancer, but cancer is more than 100 diseases, different kinds of diseases that have different kinds of changes. And that's why we need a whole community of researchers attacking it from different angles in order to make a difference. Realistically, some of these cancers are curable, and we have, over the last few decades, developed cures for some kinds of cancer. And we're trying to figure out which of the remaining ones we might be able to treat most effectively with new agents, new molecular targets, by the first step identifying the changes that are specific to that type of cancer.
Dr. Nielsen's next step is taking the drug that targets those changes in synovial sarcoma and see if it works in patients. A task he can't wait to get started.